I'm really rich. I'll show you that in a second.
If we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
Trump has to put up all of the money. New York Attorney General Letitia James now telling the court that Trump doesn't have the money to pay the full penalty. As a result, she says, quote, we are going to take his buildings.
The New York Appellate Court has denied an attempt by Donald Trump to delay payments of his $454 million civil fraud judgment. That means for now, the former president is required to pay that bond in the coming weeks.
You got to pay your bills.
Defense attorneys had argued Trump was prepared to post a $100 million bond, but couldn't secure more without selling off some of his real estate.
He doesn't have that kind of cash, even though he always brags that he does. He can't even get anybody to give him a bond.
Trump is required to post a bond for hundreds of millions of dollars in the coming weeks.
An appeals court judge will not let former President Donald Trump just post part of a massive bond after a $464 million judgment against him. Trump's legal team wanted to delay enforcement. They asked the judge to let Trump, his sons, and the company post $100 million instead of the full amount. The judgment comes after a judge found Trump and 4 others liable of fraud, conspiracy, and issuing false financial statements.
You got to pay your bills.
Former President Trump took the Fifth Amendment 400 times while being questioned by the New York Attorney General's office.
I never felt that these statements would be taken very seriously. You got to pay your bills.
Did you review any of those statements from the period 2011 to 2021 during your preparation for today's testimony?
For all of the reasons provided in my answer, which is incorporated herein, in its entirety, I decline to answer the question.
His properties are probably so encumbered by debt, by mortgages. Heck, he may be in the red, not in the black. He may owe more money than he actually has. That's likely why he can't get a bond for the full amount.
Counsel, I think we can all stipulate that if he says same answer, we will all understand it to be the same invocation.
That's correct.
To speed things up. Okay.
No problem.
With that note, sir, you are currently the president of the Trump Organization. Is that correct?
Same answer.
They know by looking at his statements of financial condition that this guy is worth a lot of money, billions and billions of billions of dollars, and that didn't even include his brand.
And when I refer to the Trump Organization, is it accurate to describe that as the trade name for an umbrella organization that holds assets beneficially owned by you?
Same answer.
Trump is struggling to even come up with part of the cash for what he owes in those fraud cases. He basically revealed this week that he won't or can't pay the $500 million judgment in the fraud case in New York.
You got to pay your bills.
His lawyers put it like this. It would be, quote, impossible to secure and post a complete bond. They say he might have to sell property to pay this penalty. Now, that is them claiming he doesn't have the money. Either they're telling the truth and he doesn't, or they're trying to deceive a court about his money after a case where he was found liable for fraud, which is deceptions about money. That would be a bad look, to say the least. All of this is a blow to someone who's talked a lot about being the king of debt and now can't even post a full bond.
I'm the king of debt. I'm great with debt. Nobody knows debt better than me. I've made a fortune by using debt. I like debt. For me, you got to pay your bills.
Of the assets in that trust, is that correct?
Same answer.
Why did you form that trust in April 2014?
Same answer.
Directly contradict what his lawyers said as recently for the purposes of appeal. That's what we're talking about. Trump's problems this week, where his lawyers are saying, we don't have it, we'd have to sell property, we don't have that kind of money lying around, directly contradict what his lawyers said as recently as last week about Trump's supposed net worth.
This guy is worth a lot of money, billions and billions of billions of dollars.
I mean, he does, of course he has money. You know, he's a billionaire.
Unfortunately, they picked the wrong guy to pick on, in my opinion, because he's strong, he's resilient, and he happens to have a lot of cash.
He happens to have a lot of cash, except he doesn't. Again, there's a difference between what they say on Fox or in public and what they have to say in court. Look at this statement from Trump's lawyers. Properties would likely need to be sold to raise the capital. In other words, they don't have it. The other lawyer who you just heard from last week said it was not true, according to the lawyers now.
We already know, courtesy of Trump's own admissions in this new court filing, he's not nearly as rich as he has always claimed to be. But here's the thing, he can't even get a bond in the full amount. And if his properties were worth billions of dollars, as he's always bragging and puffing, and do you know how easy it would be for him to get a bond? Because a bondsman or an insurance company would say, of course we'll put up the bond. All you have to do is pledge your property to us as collateral.
Trump all but concedes he has insufficient liquid assets to pay to satisfy the judgment.
You got to pay your bills.
Under New York law, that means James can go ahead and seize things. For example, bank accounts, take control of properties. Under the law, when you lose this kind of fraud judgment, if you defy it, well, it becomes a matter of what the Attorney General is willing to do. And she's been vocal about her intent.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court. And we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
At one point earlier this week, he said, well, what if instead of putting up a $400 million that I owe, what if I gave you a $100 million bond instead of the full amount? That's not how things work. So very quickly, the judge said, no, you lost. This is not a negotiation.
You got to pay your bills.
This is not a thrift store, and this is not some real estate deal like the ones where you were found guilty of some fraud.
Man, Donald Trump is circling the drain financially, and I have a feeling it's more than just his financial circumstances that are going to get swept down that drain. You know, I think this is going to begin to infect everything. His criminal cases, his other pending civil cases. I mean, he's lost case after case after case, and he's about to be criminally prosecuted in case after case after case. This is going to infect everything.
We are approaching a Baroque era of a potentially seemingly Baroque real estate mogul that has more in common with comedy than traditional lawyering. Maybe I'll just pay you a quarter of it. That might be some Real Housewives stuff, and it might be funny in other contexts, but the judge saw it obviously as no laughing matter. That someone who claims to be so rich and is running to be president just said, I don't have it, could I give you a quarter of it?
You got to pay your bills.
That's where we are in the New York case while Trump is in court on the federal case, and a lot of other trials may or may not happen this year.
It feels like it's becoming clearer every day that Donald Trump is done.
And in another blow to his financial reputation, former President Donald Trump has been dropped off the Forbes 400 list of wealthiest Americans.
This is probably the thing that upsets him the most, right? Because he's all about this image of himself as a billionaire. And we all know many rich people who ask not to be on it and who pretend to have less money than they do because it's actually quite gaudy to be on it. But I think that for Trump, this is like a blow to his heart. And I think it's going to be, there will be truths or tweets or whatever it is that he does. And there will be a lot of rage because, his whole thing is that he's rich.
Tim, you were the first to write that Donald Trump is lying about his wealth very long time ago. He sued you. You won the lawsuit because he's been lying about his wealth for a long time. Now he finally hits a courtroom that is even more effective on this point than the libel courtroom that you were in.
Yeah, let's put for a long time in context. He began doing this in the 1970s. He lobbied Forbes magazine on behalf of his father in the middle of a recession, saying that somehow magically the Trump family's wealth was growing. And I think he realized very early on that he could play the press. And he did it for a number of reasons. He did it because he has this vast well of insecurity that he thinks dollar signs fill up. He cares about being pegged at the top of rich lists because he's needy. But it also was an effective tool to put him in front of bankers who might not otherwise have spent any time with him.
You got to pay your bills.
The judge put his finger on this idea of Trump living in a fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
At one point in our litigation, we asked him how he valued his golf courses, and because he didn't provide any documentation of profits and losses. And our lawyer said, well, if you don't have a P&L, how do you know how much these things are really worth? And he just shot right back, mental projections. And that is Donald Trump in his political life, in his financial life, in the world. He mentally projects whatever he wants around him, so he has this reality distortion field. What's happening now is the field's been pierced, and he's being held to account by a court of law. And I think he's in a really, significant place for both his familial legacy getting upended and obviously his ability to do business in the state of New York.
And as a friend of mine said, you must be the most honest man in the world. We had, I believe, 11 million pages, but a lot. And you've gone over them, and so have others. And friends of mine have said, you are the most honest person in the world.
After a judge found Trump and 4 others liable of fraud, conspiracy, and issuing false financial statements.
What do you think about the fact that Donald Trump is this tight, that when I say tight, I mean he's this broke in terms of liquidity?
And what's amazing about this is, remember, Donald Trump's whole presidency is built on the lie that he has unlimited funds, that he's a genius businessman with billions of dollars, right? And again, this is where candidate Trump gets in real trouble with defendant Trump, right? Defendant Trump is not served by candidate Trump, right? Like, his numbers on the fraud case were much, much higher because he was a candidate. He went in there and said, I have $1 gazillion. And if he had just gone in there and said, I'm sorry that we lied and, it was the wrong thing to do. I mean, even the judge said that if there had just been the tiniest bit of contrition.
All right, Donald. No, Don. You got to let us ask questions. You can't just talk. No, you got to let us actually ask questions. You're just talking. All Muslims. Donald, you're not going to keep talking. We will go to break if you keep talking. We're going to ask you questions. All right, go to break. Go to break, everybody. Go to break. Go to break. Go to break right now. We'll be right back with more Morning Joe.
You got to pay your bills.
And when I refer to the Trump Organization, is it accurate to describe that as the trade name for an umbrella organization that holds assets beneficially owned by you?
Same answer.